Welcome to the Unreal BootCamp lesson on custom entities and post-hook cloud code scripting. In this lesson, we're going to create an aggregate leaderboard using a custom entity. Each player will then submit scores on behalf of their country. A cloud code post-hook script will be triggered every time a score is posted to the main leaderboard to update the country leaderboard. An aggregate country leaderboard isn't possible using a standard leaderboard. Fortunately, we can implement the country leaderboard with custom entities. An important note before we continue, custom entities are only available on a brainCloud Plus plan. As a result, this account has been upgraded for this lesson. The new plan has made our app live. As a result, we need to unlock our app before we make any changes. Enter the app name and then click Verify. On the left, click Design, then Cloud Data, followed by Custom Entities. On the right, click the Create button. Enter an entity type name, an identifier, and a data template. Click Create. Click the newly created Country Leaderboard Custom Entity. On the right, click Edit, then click Custom Indexes. On the right, click the Create button. Give the index a name, and then enter a value for the index. A value of -1 specifies the index will order the elements in descending order. Set the options for the custom index. Click Create. Close the dialog. On the left, click Cloud Code, then Scripts. Click the plus button to create a new script. Name the script Post to Leaderboards Post Hook. Ensure that this script is not client callable. Remove the default parameters and leave them blank. Click Create. In the log debug JSON method, add the text post hook, then click Save. Click the 3 horizontal lines in the top left corner. Under Cloud Code, click API Hooks. An API hook allows you to attach a cloud code script to any brainCloud client API. When creating an API hook, you have the choice between pre and post hooks. Pre-hook scripts are executed before the API call they are hooked into, whereas post-hook scripts are executed after the API call. For this API hook, select the leaderboard service. Then select the post score to leaderboard operation. From the pre-post dropdown list, select post. Finally, from the script dropdown list, select the post to leaderboards post-hook script. Before we save, we have a couple parameters to enter. Click Save. Click Scripts. Then select the Post to Leaderboard script. Click the Debug button on the right. Click the Quick Auth button. This will authenticate us the same way the API Explorer does. Click Execute. This executed the Post to Leaderboard script and provided the parameters below. It also executed the Post Hook script, which doesn't do much right now other than log the input data. In the logs, notice that the Post Hook script ran twice. It's important to see the data that's available to us before we rate the Post Hook script. Let's inspect the first post-hook script's input log. The post-hook script gets a lot of data. It receives all the data from the post score to leaderboard request, including the leaderboard ID, score, and nickname. This data appears as the calling message object. In this log, we can see that the score was posted to the main leaderboard. There's also the leaderboard ID and collection name parameters that were set up in the API hook. In the second post-hook script input log, you'll notice that the data is practically the same as the first one, with one notable difference. The calling message data contains a different leaderboard ID, daily. In the post-hook script that we are about to write, we want to ensure that the logic only gets executed once, not twice, so we'll need to check that the leaderboard ID that's passed in is main. Click the X to close the debug panels. Open the Post to Leaderboards post-hook script, then click Edit. Remove the debug log. Then declare a variable for the country code. Write an if statement that compares the calling message's leaderboard ID to the API hook's leaderboard ID parameter. If you recall, the API hook's leaderboard ID parameter is set to main. Get the service proxies for the custom entity service and the player state service. Request the user state from the player state service. If that request was successful, get the user's country code. Then check to see if the country code is defined or not. If the country code is not defined, mark the response success flag to false. There's nothing more we can do without the country code. If the country code is valid, then we need to use it to see if there's a custom entity that already exists for that country code. The request we're going to use is called getEntityPageRequest. In case you're not sure what's needed for a request, we can always check out the API reference. Scroll down to the usage section. You'll notice that the API reference even has code samples to help you build your cloud code scripts. Now that we know the parameters needed for the request, let's head back to the brainCloud portal and finish the script. Declare the entity type, which is the post-hook's collection name parameter, and then set up the context parameter. Invoke the custom entity services getEntityPageRequest, passed in the entity type and the context as arguments. Check the response to see if there's a valid custom entity. If there isn't, then one will have to be created. To do that, set up the custom entity's data, including the country code and score. Set the ACL to 2, this stands for public read-write access. Declare 2 local variables for time to live and is owned. Make the create entity request, passing in the entity type, the country JSON data, the ACL, the time to live, and the is owned value as arguments. If the request was successful, log the response. In the event that the getEntityPageRequest returned a valid custom entity, we instead need to invoke the custom entity services increment data request. First, set up the field's JSON data to set up the score value. Then invoke the custom entity services increment data request, passing in the entity type, the entity ID, and the field's JSON data as the arguments. If the request was successful, log the response. Set the response success flag to true, then save the script. Click the Post to Leaderboard script. Click Debug. First, clear the logs, then click the Quick Auth button, then click Execute. Notice in the logs the post-hook script ran. We know this because we can see that the read player state request, the get entity page request, and the create entity request were all made successfully. Click the 3 horizontal lines in the top left corner. Click Cloud Data, then Custom Entities. Click the country leaderboard entity, then on the right, click Monitor. Click the entity. This page displays the entity's details, including the entity data. We can see that we have 1 score posted for Canada. Let's post some more. On the left, click Design, then Cloud Code followed by API Explorer. In the Parameters section, modify the country code from Canada to US. Click Execute to authenticate. Once authenticated, click Scripts. Select the Post to Leaderboard script. Click Debug. Notice that the session ID from the API Explorer persisted here. Then, without clicking Quick Auth, click Execute. We have now posted a score to the country leaderboard for the US. Click the 3 horizontal lines in the top left corner. Click Cloud Data, then Custom Entities. Click the country leaderboard entity, then on the right, click Monitor. Notice that we now have 2 entities. Click the entity with the US identifier. On the left, click Design, then Cloud Code, followed by Scripts. Select the Post to Leaderboard script. Click Debug. Before clicking Execute, modify the score parameter, just so that it's something different. Click Execute. Our score's been posted. Click the 3 horizontal lines in the top left corner. Click Cloud Data, then Custom Entities. Click the country leaderboard entity, then on the right, click Monitor. Click the entity with the US identifier. Notice that the US's entity data has 2 scores posted. We are just about done in the brainCloud portal. In a moment, we'll set up the custom leaderboard in the example game. First though, let's look at the request that we'll use to get the entity data in the API Explorer. From the Service drop-down list, select Custom Entity. From the Operations drop-down list, select Get Entity Page. Format the parameters for the request. The entity type is Country Leaderboard. Then remove the search criteria, and then set the sort criteria. Click Execute. The data that's returned contains an item array. Each element represents an entity in the country leaderboard. The returned data is also in a sorted state, so the US's entry is first in the items array, followed by Canada's. Let's consult with the API reference to see the C++ syntax for the get entity page request. Compared to previous requests, clicking the JSON response isn't as useful here, since the custom entity data that is returned will depend on the entity data that was set up. In this case, the API Explorer is your best bet to view the data that the request will return. Navigate to the Unreal editor. Click Play and run the game. Click brainCloud, then click Leaderboards. To streamline this lesson, the Leaderboards widget has been modified to include the country leaderboard. The data, of course, has not been hooked up to it though yet. Let's open Xcode and start coding. Navigate to the constants.h file. Declare a constant for the country leaderboard ID. This constant does not have an equivalent on brainCloud, but we're going to get the custom entity data from brainCloud, parse it, and turn it into a leaderboard object. We'll use this ID to look up the leaderboard in the Leaderboards manager. Next, declare a constant for the leaderboard entity type. This constant must match the one on brainCloud. Navigate to the networkmanager.h file. Declare a public method called requestCountryLeaderboard. Scroll down and declare a pair of private callback functions that will be used for requesting the country leaderboard custom entity data. Finally, declare a private network callback handler object called mGetCustomLeaderboardCallback. Navigate to the networkmanager.cpp file. In the constructor, bind the private callback methods to the mGetCustomLeaderboardCallback handler's success and failure delegates. Scroll down. Implement the request country leaderboard method. In the body, check to see if the user is authenticated. If the user is not authenticated, log a meaningful error message. And if the callback pointer is set, invoke the callback's onLeaderboardRequestFailed method. If the user is authenticated, format the JSON context data. Then invoke the brainCloud's custom entity services getEntityPageRequest. Passing in the country leaderboard entity type constant, the JSON context, and the address of the getCustomLeaderboard callback object as the arguments. Scroll down to the bottom. Implement the onGetCustomLeaderboard callback method. In the body, log the response data. Declare a tier array of leaderboard entry objects called leaderboard entries. Create a JSON reader using the JSON response data. Then declare a JSON object and using the JSON reader, deserialize the JSON data. If the JSON data was deserialized successfully, we can now start to parse the data. Get the data JSON object from the root JSON object, then get the results JSON object from the data JSON object, and from the results JSON object, get the items array. Loop through each element in the items array. Get the data object for each element and parse the nickname and the score. The score will then be converted from milliseconds to seconds. And place the nickname, rank, and time onto the leaderboard entries tier array to create a leaderboard entry object. Create a leaderboard object, pass in the country leaderboard ID constant and the tier array of leaderboard entries as the arguments. If the callback pointer is set, invoke the callback's onLeaderboardRequestCompleted method, pass in the leaderboard object as the argument. Notice that we're using the existing leaderboard callback method. That's because as far as the leaderboards manager is concerned, this is a regular leaderboard. But this method is doing the hard work in parsing the custom entity data and creating a leaderboard object with that data. And that's what makes custom entities so great. We can always implement the data the way we want it on brainCloud. Even if the standard way doesn't support our grandiose ideas, custom entities will. Next, implement the onGetCustomLeaderboard error method. Log an error message along with the JSON error. If the callback is set, invoke the callback's onLeaderboardRequestFailed method. Navigate to the spaceshooterGameModeBase.cpp file. Scroll down and find the requestLeaderboards method. In the body, invoke the network manager's requestCountryLeaderboard method. Navigate to the leaderboards dialogWidget.cpp file. Scroll to the bottom and find the onWriteSegment button clicked method. Remove the to-do comment and in its place invoke the setLeaderboardData method, passing in the country leaderboard ID constant as the argument. Click the Run button to build the project and launch the Unreal editor. Once the Unreal editor opens, run the game. Click brainCloud, then Leaderboards. Notice that the country leaderboard entries that we entered on the brainCloud portal are displayed. Let's play the game quick and see if we can add to the Canadian leaderboard entry. The game is over and our score has been posted. The post hook script was executed on the server and our score was added to Canada's custom entity entry. Part 1 of combining brainCloud requests via Cloud Code script is the next lesson in the Unreal BootCamp.